Let's do it. Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are so glad that you are here with us, and just by showing up today, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, we are thrilled to present two artistic rock stars, one from the world of music, the other from the world of visual art and pop culture. And these two also happen to be two of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And I promise you will leave today a lot smarter and more inspired than you arrived. More on that in just a moment. Before we get started, let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the interview itself. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address speakers and attendees. I want to thank our sponsors for without their support, we could not keep this free. Thank you to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, Four Roses Bourbon, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Moo TV, Jive Printing, Project Music, and Cushmaster's brand of CBD products. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome back my good friend and alum of this platform, Parthenon Huxley. Parthenon is a recording artist, singer-songwriter, guitarist, and producer. Like everyone else's age, it's the Beatles' fault. 4 of Parthenon's 9 LPs have earned Album of the Year honors, including his Columbia release, Sunny Nights. The single, I Loved Everything from Purgatory Falls, released by Universal, reached #1 on Rolling Stone magazine's exclusive download chart. Parthenon tours the world as guitarist, singer for the orchestra starring ELO former members, a band he joined in 1998 when it was known as ELO Part 2. He's performed at London's Royal Albert Hall, on Star Factory, Russia's equivalent to American Idol, and on television to all of South America at Vina del Mar Festival in Chile. His songs with Foreigner, A Man Called E, Sass Jordan, Kyle Vincent, and Steve Salas all achieved chart success. Hundreds of television shows, from Keeping Up with the Kardashians to Major League Baseball, feature Parthenon's instrumental production music. Huxley has performed with the likes of Duff McKagan, Alan Parsons, Linda Ronstadt, Matthew Sweet, Jose Feliciano, Don Dixon, Colin Blunstone, Robin Zander, and London's Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. He was cast as the bass player of the BC-52s in the Flintstones movie. He played a Gibstoned bass. You gotta love this. He lectures at Omega Studios School of Applied Recording Arts and Sciences in Rockville, Maryland, and offers guitar instruction online. Parthenon holds a BA in journalism from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, the greatest school ever, and was Spectator magazine's rock critic from 1981 to 1986. He's currently writing a memoir and working on a studio album, #10. He lives in Chevy Chase, Maryland, is married with 2 daughters. Welcome back, P. Hux. So glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Tom.
And joining Parthenon as today's featured guest is none other than Shepard Fairey. Shepard was born in Charleston, South Carolina. He received a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Illustration at the Rhode Island School of Design in Providence, Rhode Island. In 1989, he created Andre the Giant as a posse sticker that transformed into Obi Giant Art Campaign, with imagery that has changed the way people see art and the urban landscape. After more than 30 years, his work has evolved into an acclaimed body of art, including the 2008 Hope portrait of Barack Obama, found at the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. In 2017, the artist collaborated with Amplifier to create We the People series, which was recognizable during the women's marches and other rallies worldwide in defense of national and global social justice issues. Shepard's stickers, guerrilla street art presence, and public murals are recognizable globally. His art His works are in the permanent collections of the Boston Institute of Contemporary Art, Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, and the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery, the Victoria and Albert Museum in England, and many others. Shepard has painted more than 105 large-scale murals across 5 continents worldwide. For more information, visit his website, www.obeygiant.com. Please welcome these 2 rock stars to the smartest people in the room. Take it away, P. Hux.
You guys.
P. Hux?
Oh, you froze for a second, Tom.
You're up.
Okay. Full disclosure, Shepard, our families know each other. You grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and in the 1970s, my parents moved in next door. Our families became friends. Your dad became my parents' physician, and my dad became kind of a lookout for you when you were skateboarding in the street. Do you recall that?
Yeah, your dad was always a very, very nice guy. But the first thing I remember was I loved to trespass. So I was playing hide and go seek, hiding under your parents' porch next door. Your dad came down the steps and kind of busted me there. And I said, please, if you just let me hide here and tell the guy that's going to be coming by looking for me that I went the other way. And he played right along. He was a great accomplice. And so I always loved him for that.
I think my dad had a little bit of you in him. So we had a chat a couple of weeks ago. You say your art is inspired by music. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I mean, one, there's, the literal side of music, ideas and lyrics from whether it's Bob Marley, Public Enemy, The Clash, The Dead Kennedys, Rage Against the Machine, Patti Smith, Bikini Kill. Music has been very inspiring to me in imagery that I want to make that's creating sort of a parallel narrative for the ideas in the music. But on a grander philosophical scale, I guess, music has been a democratic, populist, accessible medium that reaches so many people without them feeling intimidated. And it's a model I've wanted to emulate with my art because, music connects to a lot of people. It's about feeling first and then thinking second. If you get people to move their ass, maybe their brain will follow. And so I'm looking to the model that musicians have used. Also the way that music and the culture surrounding music is it's a multifaceted assault on the senses. So you've got the way the musicians present their music itself, but how they present themselves, their fashion, their album packaging, all their other visuals. It's an entire ecosystem. So I've really tried to implement that way of working to what I do as a visual artist.
Well, it's really interesting. Yeah, I've always loved music because of its rhythm, its melody, its physicality. There's so many, and its visuals. It's such a multifaceted art form. I've always found it to be, to me, the grandest of them all. But yeah, I totally get you. And it's really interesting what you say when the democratic side of music. It made me think of Woody Guthrie. And didn't he have something on his guitar that said, "This machine kills something"? What was it?
This machine kills fascists.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a really important part of that idea is how the democracy and the connection to community, everyone can relate to going to a concert and feeling like you get to retain your distinct personality and your distinct relationship with the music, but you're also there, in sort of, spiritual harmony with all these other people, unless maybe it's a Limp Bizkit concert.
In which case your motives can be questioned.
Yeah. and the harmony is probably not there either. But anyway, I mean, I think even aggressive music can be a very healthy outlet for people that otherwise might do genuinely destructive things more than mosh and put their fists in the air.
Yeah, I obviously you've thought of interesting, I think, and statistical thing. You also DJ. How does that inform what you do?
Well, the DJing is something I love just because I love music, and I look at DJing as sort of an audio version of graphic design, where graphic design is about taking different elements and finding the most pleasing combination and presentation that actually maybe the sum elevates all the parts. And so when I'm working through how to get a DJ set flowing and how things can work together, and there's a cumulative impact of all the curation and the mixing, it's just the most fun thing, but it's much more visceral than what I'm doing as a visual artist. And then I get to share that in a way that I get to see the reaction firsthand. So that idea of community and something that's that's very, it's a shared experience. That's exciting, and that's something that I don't really get with my visual art in the same way. And music has always been important for my art events. I've had things where Clem Burke and Billy Idol and Steve Jones were performing at a show that I was doing. Well, LL Cool J, Tim Armstrong from Rancid and Operation Ivy, DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill. We bring in a lot of great people to try to create sort of an experience around the art that takes it beyond just pinky out, wine glass in hand, quiet looking at art, taking it to something that's that's a lot more memorable and has more than just the visual art component.
I just thought of this. You can't party without art.
Yeah.
So let's move over. Let's move over to more of a business side of this. And I found all that what you just said really, really interesting. Tell us about working with bands as clients. How collaborative or stubborn are musicians when it comes to album art, and what's the give and take like?
Well, when I'm approached by musicians to work on album packaging or posters, I'm quite reverent to their point of view because they know what they want to convey. And I have my ideas when listening to them, because I think I do have 30 years of refining my my visual techniques of translating what they're asking for, but ultimately it's about them being happy. And if I can have a part of my personality and my aesthetics in the final product, I'm really happy that then, especially if I love their music, then I'm hijacking the emotion in a sense by association that music creates. And when I've worked with Public Enemy, with Interpol, with Iggy Pop, with Led Zeppelin, with the Rolling Stones, it's always an honor to have that association. The other thing that I take into consideration is what's the band's existing visual legacy, because I think the fans develop a really strong attachment to what they think is authentic to that band's look. And so the trick for me is figuring out how to make sure that I'm honoring that history, but also bringing something new, because otherwise you could just basically repackage the existing graphics and there would be no point to bring me in. So finding that balance is something I'm always really concerned with achieving. And then there are newer bands that I get to work with who don't have anything established. And that's an exciting opportunity to be able to build that relationship between what people are hearing and seeing. And, this is here's an example, Andy Warhol doing the first Velvet Underground cover. That was an iconic cover for a really important band. I'm always looking for those opportunities.
Right, right. It's almost like the role of a producer with an act. The producer's job is to help them with their vision. Of course, you're going to bring something to the party. That's why you're there. But I see what you're saying. It's really the artist's vision, and it's just interesting, the graphic component to the musical component, and how to find that happy marriage is really interesting. I think that when I think of Jimmy Page, he strikes me as a really determined gatekeeper, kind of jealously guarding the treasure that is the Led Zeppelin catalog.
Yeah.
When you created the art for the Greatest Hits collection, Mothership, how much of a free hand were you given, and was it Page you always had to answer to?
Well, a little background on that project, which I think is kind of funny and maybe, Spinal Tap-ish, is that the surviving members of Led Zeppelin, John Paul Jones, Jimmy Page, and Robert Plant, each had very specific ideas about what they'd like to see for that greatest hits package. Each one, brought in designer, photographer, and then it was worked on, and this process, and then when they showed it to the other two, it was rejected. And this happened over the course of a year and a half. So I was contacted because I'm friends with Metallica, and their management overlaps Metallica and Led Zeppelin. I was contacted with 2 weeks until the final art was supposed to be turned in, and I was given 2 days to submit sketches. I did 2 sketches. One of them was what you see for Mothership, basically finished. And all 3 of them agreed on it. And it was the first thing they'd all 3 agreed upon in a year and a half. And I thought, okay, this is just going to be a sketch, a starting point. I'm going to have to do a lot of evolution, revision to this. But luckily they liked it. And then I was able to develop out the entire package and then maintain a relationship with Led Zeppelin. So I was able to do their Celebration Day package in 2013, also 2012, maybe 2012. Yeah, 2012, I think. But and then I've done a couple of projects with Robert Plant in addition to that. Now, that panned out really well. It was very lucky. They don't always work out that easily, but in some ways I think that I benefited from them being up against a deadline and they needed to choose something. But I'm proud of that package. And when I did that, I looked at the Led Zeppelin 2 gatefold interior with the this sort of I guess you could call it like hey, it's almost like a Parthenon. Yeah. With the Zeppelin above, and it's all in sort of airbrush gold tones. It's very dated in terms of the style. It feels very 70s, but I loved the iconic looking up, this, the celebration of just the scale of the Zeppelin. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go with that sort of feel, and it worked. They liked it, so that was nice.
Now, I just doing a little bit of research, I found out that the building that's below the Zeppelin there, that's a pub in Scotland or something, or Wales. What is that building? Do you recall?
The building that I used in that piece, it's basically a picture of a theater that I re-illustrated more graphically. And my recollection was that it was originally from New York or Chicago. I made a couple of adjustments to it to make it a little bit simpler and just have this idea of classic, theater where you would a positive association with going to a concert. That was all it was intended to do. It wasn't meant to be a nod to anything specifically within Zeppelin's history. I mean, they've played a ton of those in a zillion places, which is why it's so great that almost anybody can project their experience with a band in in a nice sized venue. I wasn't going to do a stadium where they could also play, or an outdoor racetrack. I wanted it to feel like, and you caught Zeppelin in the first 2 years maybe, but
I get you. That's cool. That's cool. These days, consuming music is practically free via subscription models, and that has radically changed the business side of things for bands and labels. What has changed at the intersection of bands, labels, and graphic artists? Are budgets a lot different now, or what's happened?
Well, for the most part, budgets are a lot less. Early in my career, I was super happy to get a call from Capitol Records, or certain different. I mean, I've worked with Warner Brothers, Capitol, Universal, all of them pretty much, and there were always some nice budgets. And I had been working in the skateboard industry, so which has a very low ceiling money wise, and so I was really happy to get those jobs. The budgets have decreased, but some of the smarter bands I've seen figure out ways to make special art packaging, and whether it's Radiohead or Franz Ferdinand, Tom Petty, a lot of people I've worked with understand the value of making really great packaging that's collectible. I did Black Sabbath's 10 years, 10-year war vinyl box set packaging, and an understanding that not every music consumer is going to want to spend that kind of money, but for the people that have a really passionate relationship with the band, this is something that allows them to demonstrate that tangibly, and you really benefit from making it good visually. So I've been able to do a lot of projects, and the way that I frequently work on those things, even when they're a bigger band like Black Sabbath, the budgets are smaller, but what I do is I negotiate the ability to make a limited edition screen printed poster that I can release through my website, while also giving the band some of the limited posters. So it's a win-win. They get something special out of it that they can either sell or use to, I don't know, grease A&R or radio reps palms, like, payola light.
It's so funny because musicians who are always broke are so used to barter. It just cracks me up that it goes up to the highest levels in the business too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as long as a really strong connection to the music means that there's a really strong connection to the visuals associated with the music, there's currency there. There's something that you can barter with.
And so all these labels have art departments. Did you ever butt heads with people who said, "Hey, I wanted to do the Black Sabbath project"?
Every now and then there would be things I would turn in that had been supposedly approved, and then I would see it slightly changed in a way I wasn't that happy with. But a lot of times the projects were work for hire. But now I'm able to negotiate that if there's going to be any reformatting of the work or any changing of the work, that I get to see it and approve it first.
Right.
And these are things that take years to be able to ask for. I'm in a luxurious position, but I was always pretty deferential to the musicians themselves. I've worked with Radiohead, and luckily they were really easy to work with, surprisingly, because Tom York is like one of the most he's one of the biggest perfectionists, one of the biggest sticklers out there. But luckily that went well. But a lot of times the people had enough respect to ask me if they could do something. I mean, I did have an issue where at one point I wasn't even brought into a project that was using the Obey format, and it was for Tenacious D and through Sony, where they just did an Obey the D campaign. And I tried to explain to them that I like Jack and Kyle. I know Jack Black well now. He's a really lovely guy. But if I want the Obey aesthetics to be connected with a band, Tenacious D is it's kind of it's a performance art project. It's a joke band. And I would want the opportunity to choose who that band would be, because once it's done, nobody else is going to want to do it if it's associated with Tenacious D. So I'd like to be consulted. The person from Sony, who I will not name, said, "You're lucky that we're giving you this kind of exposure."
Yeah. Thanks, Sony.
And you know, I'm nice, so I didn't say, "You're unlucky that my lawyer doesn't agree." But anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many musicians have been told, "Hey, we can't pay you, but the exposure is going to be amazing."
Yeah, I'm still building my resume according to a lot of people I talk to.
You know, create some shit and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So we've heard that NFT stands for non-fungible token. I'm going into a weird area here now. I've looked it up, and it basically means that an item is unique and cannot be replaced like an original oil painting or a one-of-a-kind baseball card. That's an NFT. A $10 bill, on the other hand, is fungible. It can easily be replaced. If it's even possible for you to explain to us in layman terms, tell us about your NFT collaboration with hip-hop producer Mike Dean, who has produced every hip-hop act I've ever heard of. What is that thing that you guys did?
Well, Mike made an album at the beginning of the pandemic called 420. He likes to smoke weed.
Okay.
A lot. And I, you know, when he first approached me about his 422 album, for which he'd like me to make the cover art and work on an NFT collaboration, I had to tell him, I'm not a weed smoker. And if that is a disqualifier, I understand. And he said, no, that was absolutely fine as long as I didn't have a problem with him smoking weed. And I said, no, I actually have been advocating for weed to be legal for 20 years. But, and hey, you know, I'm a trailblazer. It finally happened. But the way the project worked is, you know, NFTs are, well, let me explain NFTs. Yeah. An NFT is on the blockchain, and a blockchain is a way for something to have a traceable origin and life. It's the transparency that it can be followed and it can't be replicated is what all cryptocurrency is based on. And there's a lot of benefits to the blockchain for artists. You know, authorship is something, you know, you can create a certificate of authenticity on the blockchain. And years ago, when I thought to myself, how are musicians and filmmakers going to benefit from their creations? When you make something and it can be reproduced infinitely digitally and then, you know, shared without any sort of compensation, blockchain could actually make sure that creations can be tracked and that there's some way of monetizing and compensating the creator. But the main thing that I was fascinated by was how the art and music community had decided that these digital one-of-a-kind pieces, that NFTs that could be tracked on the blockchain, were a form of displaying fandom for something. So, for example, if I make a JPEG of any image that I have in my, you know, in my arsenal of images I've made, it could be free for anybody to download and pass around. But the NFT of that will have a unique, you know, a unique stamp and can't be replaced. And so it's like saying, I believe in what this person does enough to invest in the thing that they say is the authentic artifact. And so, you know, a lot of ideas about art really have come down to, the value of it comes down to authorship. You know, when somebody was selling replicas of Banksy pieces in Central Park, they thought they were replicas. They thought they were bootlegs. They were selling for $60 each. Then Banksy came out and said, oh, those were actually all real. I gave those to the, you know, this old man that had a spray art booth. And all of a sudden, the value went from $60 to $500,000 each.
So is the one thing we can take away from NFTs, it's something that can become collectible and therefore value and beneficial to artists and musicians?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I look at it this way, that up until now, if you were a big Sex Pistols fan, the ultimate thing to collect would be the God Save the Queen 7-inch, of which only 5 escaped the A&M pressing plant before they were all destroyed because the Sex Pistols had been dropped from A&M. Now, anyone who likes the Sex Pistols can listen to them on Spotify and hear God Save the Queen. They can buy the cassette, the CD. They may not be able to buy the cassette anymore, but the vinyl. But it's the rarity that says, I'm so dedicated to the Sex Pistols, I have to have this one artifact. It's not that the content is better, it's the scarcity.
It's the collector mindset, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's benefiting from the collector mindset. So when people are attacking NFTs, I find it a little bit silly, because it's just, you could just say, well, I don't think that's a good use of my money, I'll sit this one out, instead of saying like, I don't understand it, so I'm going to have to kill it.
Well, there's a lot of grumpy old men around here, and sometimes when we don't understand things right away, it's like, what are the kids up to now? But speaking only for myself. But then when you sort of start to dig into it, and also when I see a vast universe being created around an idea that I don't know anything about, I get really curious, and I say, okay, there's something here. What is going on? I mean, cryptocurrency is only about 12 years old. It's really young, but clearly there's something going on. And also, I have friends starting to dabble in it, and I'm totally intrigued now. And also, the idea of creating NFTs, I like the idea of collectibles. I think it should appeal to all of us who make records and art.
Well, one of the things that Mike Dean and I did, to get back to that portion of the conversation, is I created the art for his album cover, but I also created several pieces that were in the same style, but were meant to go with specific songs, different colorways. And then I made not only the digital art, but I made physical art of those pieces. I animated those pieces. Mike and I worked on some video stuff together. And the idea was that the NFT could be an important component of this, but if you want physical art too, that can be an add-on. And one of the things that I've seen, in some ways suffer because of the way that music budgets are a lot smaller now, is that there wasn't as much of an incentive to make a video unless you're a really huge band. And MTV doesn't even run videos anymore. But an NFT as a video, that when you purchase this NFT, you get the still art, you get the animated, you get a video, all of that can be part of the NFT. If the NFT revenue is enough, then you can justify putting all that creative energy into these things that normally are hard to justify. So, the NFT market has been all over the place. And I would say that Mike and I worked really hard, and we're hoping for a better financial result, but I enjoyed the process no matter what. And that's what I'm in it for. Money is how I keep the lights on and keep moving forward with some creative freedom, but it's not my main goal.
Yeah, I'm not into money at all too, but Tom did tell us to pitch things that we have for sale, and I'm so shocked that nobody's asked where they can get this t-shirt. And of course, www.worldwideweb.parthenonhuxley.com is the place to go. Not that I would say that out loud on this webinar, I'd be a little bit crass. And of course, you can buy all my albums up there and everything like that, but enough about me.
Great way to drum up some business.
There's no NFTs there yet, but there will be soon. All right, so Shepard, in your work, I see mandalas, I see Russian propaganda, I see minute details you might see on paper money, I see cigar box art, I see mysterious symbols of government, wartime patriotic posters, and even lace doilies. When you were growing up, what caught your eye graphically? Was there a moment you remember as a kid where it's like, oh, I can draw that, or that I love how that looks.
Well, you had your time in Charleston, so you know that there isn't a ton of inspiration for contemporary art, but I always loved album packaging, probably for the reason that it was the physical, tangible thing that I could look at. And funny that you were in an iteration of ELO, because I always loved the sort of fantasy airbrush covers of the ELO records. But then like the Rolling Stones Tattoo You cover, I loved as a kid. When I was 10 years old, our family took our first family trip to New York, and we went to the Whitney Museum, and there was a Chuck Close portrait of Philip Glass in that museum that was so beautifully photographically rendered. I couldn't imagine the technical skill it took to achieve this piece. And I stood in front of it and wandered around, and then kept going back to that to think, how was this done? How is this possible? And I wanted to draw well. So that was, that was a major motivation. I'd never seen anything that was that spectacular technically. So, and then later when I got into skateboarding and punk rock, skateboard graphics, punk rock flyers, the Black Flag album covers, all the art Jamie Reed did for the Sex Pistols, what Winston Smith did for the Dead Kennedys, any number of punk things felt both exciting visually and maybe doable for somebody that's not Michelangelo. And so as far as the motivation to participate, the DIY spirit, the do-it-yourself spirit was so important to me. And it had a subversive, irreverent side to it that really appealed to me because I was living in a very conservative place.
It also makes sense that it impacted you because it's a real intersection of music and graphics that made sense with each other.
Yes, exactly.
There's a million album covers with just a face, and that's what was always on album covers. Put the face, let them see the artist. But when it came to scissors and tape and paint and spray paint and punk, the attitude, the intersection of the art and music. Go ahead, I cut you off there, but take it away.
No, you're absolutely right. I think that the anti-hero component of punk rock, that it's not just about beautiful people, and in fact, Billy Idol was originally shunned because he was too handsome, and then he was like, well, I'll show you, I'll go to America where they're much more shallow than they are here in England.
USA.
I love Billy. He's a great guy. I've done 4 album packages for him, and he's a person that has a dichotomy a lot of people might not know. He's incredibly intelligent, and he has that charisma on stage, and the sort of lascivious, hedonistic side people know. But he's also very, very thoughtful, and I'd recommend to anyone reading his book, Dancing with Myself. It's an awesome book.
It's a great recommendation. I love reading rock books. I'll check it out. When I get a song idea, I use the voice memo app on my iPhone. What's your first step when you get an idea for a work of art?
Well, I will send myself an email reminder of what the idea is. Sometimes it will be an idea for an image. Sometimes it'll be an idea for a phrase that then I'll find the imagery to illustrate that phrase. But then I start setting up folders on my computer where I might find reference imagery ideas, or I go out and start shooting my own photos. A lot of times when I have an idea, I'm really anxious to just start, and it will irritate me for a long time if I have a good idea that I'm too busy to get to. So I always have a bunch of projects going, but the ones I'm most passionate about frequently just sort of go to the front of the line.
When you say you send yourself an email, are you literally just describing and you're writing a text, letter to yourself just about the idea?
Yeah, because a lot of times I'll have ideas right before I'm going to bed. Or sometimes I meditate occasionally. I'll have good ideas when I meditate, good ideas in the shower. Anytime that you can clear the static out of your brain, I think the better ideas start to rise to the top. And I think it happens for people in different situations, sometimes in a car ride. So whatever I can do to make sure that I'm preserving that idea and not forgetting. Sometimes I'll be driving and I'm with my wife and I say, "Can you please send me this email?"
It's you sound like a songwriter. I mean, it's shower, car, right before bed, jot it down. Of course, Keith Richards famously doing "Satisfaction" when he woke up out of a dream and all that. It's very, very, very parallel. It's interesting. So a lot of your art is gigantic scale. You're on the side of buildings. You did something with the Eiffel Tower. Tell us a little bit about the process of executing giant public art. How do you accurately scale up from a drawing to the side of a building? Can you take us through some of that math and some of that problem? I mean, is it just proportion is proportion or what?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first I should give credit to some of the muralists out there who work in a way that's really improvisational. They'll go to a wall and start to kind of sketch out on the wall what they want to do, and then build and revise and build and revise. I've never really worked that way. Even when I'm working on a small scale, I will, what I frequently do is I illustrate to conclusion lots of different elements, and then I scan them and then I compose them digitally so that I have all that trial and error I can go through to then make a digital sketch from traditionally rendered pieces. And then I've got my ingredients for a resolved composition that I will make into a painting. I use the same process for a huge mural. I get the measurements of the wall, and then I may know what I want to do, or I may need to do some tinkering to get that composition of that wall to work well. But I work in a modular way. And once I'm happy with the way the piece is composed, and if in some cases it's necessary for me to get approval from the building owner or the city council, then I submit the design, wait for that. That was the good thing about illegal street art is no waiting for approval, but it also constrains the scale a bit. So then once it's approved, I send the file out in grayscale to a printer who prints out sheets that I then cut up into 3x4 foot pieces. And those are lettered and numbered like a grid. They are then put up on the building. Me and my assistants, we go up on window washing rigs or swing or boom lifts or scissor lifts, and we put a few sheets up at a time. Hopefully the measurements of the building are right, and we cut the stencils right on the surface of the building. We've decided what base coat the building needs to be for efficiency, and then we spray paint. We pull the negative. After we cut the positive space, we spray, then we peel the negative space, we touch up, and we move like a grid. So if you watch a time lapse, it's it's sort of going like that. It almost looks like an inkjet printer on a giant scale, but it's us little humans spraying out the ink. And
it really is just like what you would do on the floor of a studio.
Yeah.
Just up in the air on a gigantic scale.
Yeah, and sometimes there are mismeasurements, or when I see something at full scale, I think it needs to be revised a little bit, and I make some revisions on the fly. But
like what?
Say a negative space area of a color, or adding additional pattern. And if I need to add additional pattern, hopefully it's something that I can do with masking tape and a little bit of freehand. Sometimes it means I have to quickly find a place in town to print out a little bit more material but these things, working on a large scale in a lot of ways is forgiving because everything tightens up from a distance. So when I'm working on a canvas, it has to be very precise. When I'm working on a huge scale like that, a lot of times the surfaces are brick, they're uneven. All those imperfections, though, are barely noticeable in relation to a 7-story high mural.
Right. It sounds like also all your guerrilla skills from all those years of sneaking up onto buildings and facing just ridiculous circumstances, steep roofs and cans of glue on your. I mean, it sounds like sort of a dream to do a flat building legally. I mean, it obviously, if there is a problem, you've got a solution because you've done so many different ways. You've done it so many times.
Yeah, a lot of the techniques that I use are just more sophisticated versions of stuff that I started doing guerrilla. So yeah, to have more time and not be looking over my shoulder for the cops is great. But then again, the sense of freedom and just exhilaration that came with doing illegal street art is something that is a real source of energy, and so sometimes I miss that. I've been arrested 18 times, and there are always consequences ranging from a fine to a little bit of jail time to both to having my insulin taken away and almost dying a couple of times. But hey, man, I'm committed to my art.
Well, I salute you. Let me just say that for people who haven't seen it, on Hulu, there's a great movie documentary on Shepard called Obey Giant. Really, really interesting, and it's got a lot of the legal talk that has surrounded Shepard in recent years. It's very well explained in the movie, and I didn't really want to bring all that here. I do have one question about color, and I like in the Hope poster of Obama, there's red and blue right next to each other. My simple art mind tells me that is a no-no. You can't, because it vibrates next to each other. But you mentioned a couple weeks ago when we talked that there are simple tricks how to make that work. Can you just briefly tell me how that works?
Sure. Well, the main thing is proportion, and then the precise chroma. So is the blue really saturated and is the red really saturated? Then they're going to vibrate. But I desaturated my blue a bit. One, so it didn't look quite so much like all the rednecky nods to the American flag that you see in places that I think are sort of lazy and nationalistic. And to say like, hey, I want to be patriotic with this poster, but on my terms and with a slightly more sophisticated color palette. But anyway, it's a lot of trial and error. But with that image of Obama, I loved his speech in 2004. We're not red states, we're not blue states, we're the United States. And I wanted something that conveyed that visually. So I looked for an image where the lighting was split, shadow on one side, highlights on the other. So, but meeting in the middle. So red on the shadow side, blue on the highlight side. And it was, it also was, I was channeling some inspiration from the 1960 campaign poster for JFK, where he's looking into the distance. There's a sense of vision. There's also the famous portrait of Lincoln has a bit of that. It's called Sin Affair, meaning which I think I'm paraphrasing, but means something along the lines of an appealing scene, an appealing pose that's got some that is iconic.
Gotcha. So everybody knows the Obama poster. Everybody knows the the Giant Has a Posse stickers. Is there other art of yours that you wish people knew more about?
Well, there's I hope a lot of people know about the We the People series that I did for the Women's March / anti-inauguration for Trump, because those are about celebrating everyone's humanity, whether they're white or Christian or anything else, and that the melting pot idea that the country benefits from diversity and everybody's got equal humanity and should be treated with equal dignity. It was great to see how those were embraced, but I think that when we're looking at a time of so much division, something that's about looking at what we have in common, I want to remind people that that's what I was trying to do with that series, and what I hope that we'll try to do to come together to solve big problems that are not going to be solved by tribalism.
Yeah. Is that series hanging somewhere? I'm sure it's online, but is it hanging somewhere?
Well, as far as museums go, I'm not actually sure, but if you look up Shepard, Fairey, We the People, it was also done through an organization called Amplifier. So amplifier.org has those images, and they do a lot of social justice things. And I work with them on a lot of projects. I've also done a series called We the Future with them, and then a reconnect, reimagine series. And they've got some really amazing augmented reality where if you put your phone up to some of the portraits I've made, they will become animated with speeches from those people like Valerie Kaur, and who's got a book out called Revolutionary Love. And then she's got a project called Revolutionary Love. And then Common, the rapper, who also does a lot of social justice work, he has got a great speech. So a lot of times what I'm trying to do with my work is make a picture that I'm proud of, that I think is compelling, but also connect to things that I think need the spotlight put on them, and maybe I'm going to also raise some money with the art to support them. And there are a lot of musicians that do the same. There are a lot of people that I admire, whether it's Eddie Vedder or Chuck D or Zach De La Rocha. The Indigo Girls, or the Dixie Chicks. Sorry, the Dixie Chicks with their outspokenness and the activism they have. I admire that. I think that art and art and speaking your mind should go together.
Well, I think you do it so well. This has been really interesting, the thought processes and the thoughtfulness behind all these things. It's obvious that you're working on multiple levels at one time, not just a visual medium, and in fact trying to grapple with the public, which is the first thing we talked about in this talk. I think it's just fabulous, and I'm really glad we could do this today. Tom, are there questions from the audience that you're seeing that you wanted to ask on behalf of the crowd?
Yeah, there's a couple. Shepard, this has been fascinating. I can't thank you enough for doing this. One question that a couple folks have raised is copyright, and how do you engage copyright law to protect your intellectual property?
Well, I look at it. I try to look at it in a thoughtful way. I think that I've been on both ends of copyright issues. Frequently, I only pursue any copyright enforcement against literal bootlegs. So meaning that I've built up something that now has some sort of commercial potential, and someone says, "Thank you, we'll take it from here and reproduce it identically," and basically undermine my own market for something that I created and put in all the groundwork for. Other than that, there are a lot of things that are done that are derivatives of my work that I just let ride as fair use. Because one, I think that anyone that says that they created something from scratch is a liar. Everything is built on something else. And so, when I look at even even the laziest hip hop, like MC Hammers Can't Touch This, or or Vanilla Ice Baby, both from, one from Rick James, the other from Queen and David Bowie. Even those, I think, fall under fair use because they bring that the use of that music into a different zone with the with the rapping. So I kind of look at even something that's mildly transformative of my work as cool, let it go. Then again, when I'm working with other people's material, I try to be cautious about making sure that they're either giving me permission or I've arranged compensation, I've licensed something. Early in my career, I didn't have the money to do that. So I just worked from whatever reference material I wanted and hoped for the best. And the only really significant legal snag that I've had was with the Obama portrait, and because I worked from an Associated Press photograph. Now, I think I worked in a really transformative way.
Yeah.
And fair use, a lot of people don't understand fair use, that when the Two Live Crew did their cover of Pretty Woman, they won fair use because the conception, it wasn't the same song in some of the most basic structural and lyrical ways. It was that the conceptual character of it was quite transformed, and that no one was going to say, I was going to get Roy Orbison's version of this, but now that I've heard the Two Live Crew, I think I'd actually rather get that. They looked at it as its own unique, different thing with a different character, that maybe they're buying it because they actually wanted to make a statement about how music shouldn't be dominated by white people using things from Black culture. There could be any number of reasons, but fair use to me is a very important concept people don't always understand. What I did with the Obama poster, I think, was transforming it aesthetically and conceptually, but that was a real nightmare, very expensive for me. So I err on the side of caution now. But copyright is constantly being redefined, and frequently it's being redefined by the powerful business entities that would like to have more latitude to bully creators who are working with copyrighted raw material, but moving it in a way that is beneficial to culture, and would be a shame if audiences didn't have access to those creations. So I'm really on the side of creators more than enforcers.
When you talk about theft versus inspiration, it's kind of like that famous ruling on pornography. I can't really explain it, but I know it when I see it. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that as people, I'm still actively creating, so I'd much rather just worry about my new creation than policing my old creation. There are people that get to a certain point where they've decided they don't feel like creating anymore, and they'd much rather just ambulance chase what's happening with their prior creations. Sometimes I think that's justified. Sometimes I don't think it is.
Yeah. How are we doing on time, Tom?
I could sit here for 3 more hours listening to this guy. This is fascinating. Shepard, here's another question. What are you working on next? What's coming down the pike for you and all your fans?
Well, I'm getting ready to go to Sao Paulo, Brazil to paint a big mural, which I'm excited because I've never been there before. And there's a really great street art scene and graffiti scene there. There are a bunch of very influential artists that come out of Sao Paulo. And Sao Paulo is one of the only cities in the world that doesn't allow outdoor advertising. So a lot of those spaces that would normally be taken up by ads are open for artists to use. And I think that's a really incredible thing, and I'm super excited to be part of it. I have some big shows coming in 2020, a museum show in Seoul, Korea. I have a museum show at the Dallas Contemporary in Dallas, Texas. I'm going to be part of a show called Beyond the Streets in Shanghai, and which is all street artists who also work in a gallery context to make fine art, sculptures, canvases, things like that. But I'm always working on things with different organizations. I'm working on a project for the World Wildlife Fund right now. I don't know if I can talk about it, but I may be working with a really iconic musician who I've never been able to make a piece of legitimately. I did a subversive piece back 20 something years ago, but that's exciting. And then yeah, what else? Oh yeah, I'm working on a portrait of Lee Scratch Perry, the reggae producer who did amazing things for Bob Marley and dub, the sound of dub music, worked with the Clash. So yeah, those are just a few of the things. Like I said earlier, I just worked on a new EP cover for Billy Idol called the Roadside EP, which has some really great tracks on it. I think, you know, all of Billy's albums have, in my opinion, you know, a few things that really resonate with me, and then a few things that seem a little out of place or just aren't my style. But yeah, there's some solid tunes on that record.
I like your cover that you did for him. That sort of transparent portrait of him with the background there. That's cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Well, it sounds like your calendar and mine are exactly the same. That is impressive where you're going. And I hope that the travel is safe and not too obnoxious. I was just overseas a little bit, and, you know, getting through the protocols can be troubling, but yeah, it can be. You know, when I just came back from London and I had to take I'm vaccinated 3 times. So, cause I'm diabetic and I have, you know, I'm immunocompromised, and I believe in science, but I, you know, had to take a COVID test 2 days after I got to London. But the cool thing is your test to leave only has to be 4 days before you leave. So that was exactly 2 days after getting there was exactly 4 days before I was leaving. So I could do the arriving and leaving tests the same time. Oh, good.
While I was in London, I went to the Denmark Street space where the Sex Pistols used to practice and lived. And there's still graffiti on the wall from the band from 1976, 77. So that was quite cool to see. You know, the Sex Pistols were a life-changing band for me. And even though I think John Lydon has really lost it these days, I still find the combination of Vivienne Westwood's fashion, Malcolm McLaren as a manager, his media manipulation, you know, the Steve Jones spirit as a guitar player, workhorse, John Lydon's, you know, just savage wit. It was, it's pretty much like the full package to create a revolution. And I was like, okay, cool. Thank you for that little handbook.
A potent cocktail. Yeah,
yes, exactly.
Absolutely. I'm shocked that there's still a rehearsal room with Sex Pistol stuff. I mean, is it still a working rehearsal place? Is that why?
No, it's not. It's going to be protected behind plexiglass while a club and a hotel go up there. But Denmark Street still has a lot of music stores, and they're building a 2,000 person venue in this space. So I was talking to some guys that were working on this project because they've got huge video screens and they're interested in potentially having some of my artwork animated on those screens, which, you know, is great because my use of public art was always to reach people where they live their lives rather than forcing them to go to an intimidating venue like a gallery or a museum. So, you know, whether it's on a screen animated or on a sticker or on a poster or on a mural, it's all about connecting with the public, you know, in a way that they might not connect with the art otherwise.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you've had any work done on screens, because the LED revolution is incredible. What you can do on a screen these days. Have you had much work done in that medium?
Yeah, I have. I've had some stuff done that way in New York, and there's another spot in London that's like the next tier down from this huge one I was just looking at, that wraps around a building, and they did exactly what I'm was meeting with these other guys about. Those guys saw it and were like, oh yeah. So that's great that you did that there, but we've got the next level of that. So yeah, molecules colliding, things happening.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough, Shepard. This has been so great, and I hope everybody's enjoyed it. Tom, is there anything we need to do to follow up?
I just want to thank you both for being rock stars in your own right. P. Hux, it's always great to see you on this platform. Shepard, this is such a treat for not only me personally, but all of our audience out there. Thank you for what you do. Please keep doing it. What you said earlier resonated with me in the vein of just do good trouble, and that's what you're doing. Street art is good trouble in the vein of John Lewis, R.I.P.
Yeah. Love John Lewis. I did a portrait of him, but so thank you for seeing that connection. He's a source of inspiration. Thanks, Parthenon. Always good to see you. And yeah, thank you guys for having me on.
You bet. Right. To the audience, thank you for your continued patronage here. Come back next week. And in the meantime, as you heard Shepard say, get a frickin' shot now. Be nice to each other too. See you later, folks.
All right. Thanks, guys.